Hi there, it's Angie and Ollie, and now you get to meet Lammy. These are my quarantine buds when I don't have my kids. All right, so Matt side chats with Angie and Ollie, or we guess we could call them fireside chats because we're in Texas and it's a freaking fire outside. Um, Thoughts for today are about that we are all grieving. We're all grieving that the way things were. We're grieving the loss of whatever we've lost. We're grieving a time when we could make plans and things sort of made sense. And I think we're all in the various stages of grief. Nationally, probably globally, personally. So I know grief fairly well, and I don't know that it ever completely ends, that it comes in waves. Sometimes it's a tsunami, sometimes it's a ripple. And the stages of grief are not linear, and just because you've gone through one doesn't mean you're not going to go back to it, surprisingly, whenever it has its way with you. And once you get into the end, maybe the waves are more like ripples than tsunamis, but occasionally you'll just be surprised and you'll be right back there, no matter how much time has passed. So let's talk a little bit about the stages of grief. And I should be able to quote who came up with these, but I don't remember now. And I'm going to add a couple. I always like to add a couple of my own to everything. But anyways, the first stage of grief is denial. We can probably see that happening, and I don't need to speak specifics, and I certainly am not going to get political. I'm just being philosophical here, maybe a little psychological. Denial. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. Let's just pretend like everything's normal. Let's get back to normal. It's just too much. It's too much. You can't understand it. And it's too much to process initially. So we go into denial, whatever that looks like. Another stage of grief is anger. We can see that erupting everywhere. It's just fires exploding. And I would say like maybe anxiety falls here. Anger is probably an outward projection of what's too much to feel inside, and anxiety is probably an inward imploding projection of just too much to process, right? So we see that happening in various forms. Now, I'm not saying that there's not causes where it's appropriate to be angry, right? Anger is appropriate. I am questioning wanting someone to blame. I don't know that there's someone to blame for all the things happening. Maybe we'll find out differently. I don't know. Okay. And I have had some interesting, like my first experience with them hating online towards me. And it was, I felt like a lot of anger being projected at me. And it allowed for some of my own healing. Honestly, I was able to remember another time in life when a bunch of anger had been projected on me. And I was able to see that time from an adult perspective and realize that it had nothing to do with me. And I was able to translate that into present time and become resilient and somewhat immune to anger projections. So there's always an opportunity, right? There's always an opportunity for self-love and healing with all of these waves that come up. And then there is bargaining, right? If I go in my house and I follow the rules and I don't breathe on anybody and I don't talk, can I just go back to life as normal after that? Can we just send the kids back to school, right? Or whatever bargaining might look like for you, but we've all probably done that to some degree or are doing that to some degree. And then there's depression. There's depression. Just, I give up. I don't even want to do it anymore, right? I don't even want to brush my teeth. I'm not going to change my quarantine outfit for 4 days. I can't get pleasure out of food anymore, or just And then there is, I think, what they call acceptance. Surrender feels more appropriate to me, or maybe it's one and the same, but just moments of like, okay, so this is happening. So surrender would be like, we don't know what's going to happen next, and in this moment I don't need to know. Surrender is really beautiful. It's extremely difficult to get there, right? To release our grip on our plans and our preferences. It's also a really opportune place to be if you want to have growth, transformation, because in surrender, things have fallen away. Roles and dreams and even worries and desires and trying to make sense and trying to make a plan and trying to figure out who's to blame. And there's just moments of surrender and acceptance where you have a break from all that. It's like you're not trying to struggle to stay afloat, you're just floating, right? Part of you submerged, part of you's not. And I don't know if this is an extension of this or just a made-up phase of grief, but then there's something that I'll call oneness. And it's a deeper level of surrender where when you're in deep grief and you finally surrender to it, and it's not lasting, right? Then the veil is thin. The veil between this reality and all realities is really thin. And you can feel your connection with all that is. You can feel that life doesn't begin and end with you and your body. That there is a connection to all of life that continues on when we pass from this life. You realize that you have been receiving support from the universe, perhaps other universes, that there is tremendous amount of love, infinite love, that we've been closed off from living in this reality. And the veil is thin between life and death and these senses and more senses, and then you might feel enlightened for a moment, and just to have the next moment reel you back into anger or denial or bargaining or depression. Surrender. So those are just my thoughts, that we're all in various stages of grief. And if you've ever been through significant personal grief, you know it can be completely all-consuming. And imagine that we're all doing that simultaneously. It's intense. It's intense, right? But also from this perspective, perhaps we can have some compassion, right? And some understanding if anger is being projected at you, that person is just grieving and looking for a way out, looking to get it out. You know, if a person is unavailable to you and that frustrates you, well, maybe they're depressed. Maybe they don't have it to give right now. So, those are my fireside, mat side thoughts for the day. Ollie, do you have anything to add? Do you or Lammy have anything to add to this conversation? What stage of grief are you in? It looks like depression. Or maybe it's total surrender. I'll tell you it's a relief, because I spent a lot of time in the anxious stage, and it was debilitating, and I feel more surrender and faith than fear at this point, and I'm not expecting it to last. But we can come to a place of trust in the middle of total confusion. We can come to a place of love and unity in the middle of chaos and messy, messy life and world. And I believe that comes in the moments of presence where we arrive here, where we're not trying to make a plan or we're not trying to fix all of this, just moments where we're here. And when the veil gets thin, then we can remember that we're loved even when we're being taken apart. And sometimes that deconstruction is happening, I would maybe even say most of the time, is happening for us. It is out of love, because the things that are crumbling away are not really who we are. They're part of who we thought we should be or were told. They're part of the construct. And maybe instead of being entitled to fixing and resolution, maybe we're coming home to a birthright that is far greater than all of that. Maybe it's an open mind and an open heart and an open state of being where we can come back together instead of comparing ourselves, and instead of trying to have power over someone or subjugate our power to be loved, we can come back to a place of equality and harmony and realize that maybe we forgot that we're worthy of love. Every hurtful thing we've ever done is because in that moment we didn't feel loved. Right? And maybe we can remember that we love ourselves, that we're worthy of love, and then that will emanate outwards. But it starts here. And I feel like we need to give ourselves room and space to go through grief, to allow for this process, to wash over and through us, to take us apart and put us back together and bring us to our knees and open us. And then from there we can create a world that is based on that love.